Now and then we take you to places you've never been before. Exotic places, the stuff of dreams. We're going to do that again tonight. But the ship-breaking beaches of Bangladesh belong more in a nightmare. We all know how ships are born, how majestic vessels are nudged into the ocean with a bottle of champagne. But few of us know how they die, and hundreds of ships meet their death every year, from five-star ocean liners to grubby freighters, literally dumped with all their steel, their asbestos, their toxins, on the beaches of some of the poorest countries in the world, countries like Bangladesh. You can't really believe how bad it is here until you see it. It could be as close as you'll get to hell on earth with the smoke, the fumes, the heat. The men who labor here are the wretched of the earth, doing dirty, dangerous work for little more than $1 a day. It's not much of a final resting place, this desolate beach near the city of Chittagong on the Bay of Bengal. Ships are lined up here as at any port, but they'll never leave. Instead, they'll be dissected, bolt by bolt, rivet by rivet. Every piece of metal destined for the furnaces to be melted down and fashioned into steel rods. They don't die easily, these iron ladies of the sea. Ships are built to float, not to be ripped apart. Spilling toxins, oil, and sludge into the surrounding seas. The men who work here are dwarfed by the ships they're destroying, and they dissect the ships by hand. The most sophisticated technology on the beach is a blowtorch. The men carry metal plates, each weighing more than a ton, from the shoreline to waiting trucks, walking in step like pallbearers, or like members of a chain gang. They paint images of where they would like to be on the trucks, pictures of paradise far from this wasteland. When night falls, the work continues, and the beach becomes an inferno of smoke and flames and filth. This industry, which employs thousands and supplies this nation with almost all its steel, began with an accident, a cyclone to be precise. In 1965, a violent storm left a giant cargo ship beached here on what was then a pristine coastline. It didn't take long before people began ripping the ship apart. They took everything, and businessmen took note. Perhaps you didn't need a storm to bring ships onto the beach here. Mohammed Mohsin's family has become extremely wealthy bringing ships onto these beaches. He pays millions of dollars for each ship and makes his profit from the steel he sells. The name of his company? PHP. Peace, Happiness, and Prosperity. And this is his latest acquisition. Looks like a pretty big ship.
It is one of the small in this yard.
It's one of the smallest in the yard.
Yeah.
They have handled ships as large as 68,000 tons. And how big is this?
This is only 4,000 tons.
Only 4,000 tons?
Yes.
This is the first time Mohsin has seen this ship close up. In fact, buying a ship is not at all like buying a car. He didn't even need to see a picture before he bought it for $14 million. All he needed to know was its weight and how much the owners were charging for each ton of steel. One of the single most valuable parts of the ship, the propeller. In dollars, what would this propeller be worth to you?
Around like $35,000.
$35,000?
Yeah.
for this old propeller?
Yeah.
Wow. It may be a small ship to Mohsin, but getting onto it from the beach is still a bit delicate. Best if you don't look up or down. Work has just begun tearing this old refrigerator ship into pieces. So this is the bridge?
This is the bridge. They used to control the total ship from here. Well, there's no more captain, and I'm the captain.
You're the captain now.
No, I'm the captain.
Right. The captain of a dying ship, and the captain of one of the largest of 30 shipyards on this 10-mile stretch of beach. a beach which devours 100 ships every year, most of them from the West. So in fact, this has become the West's garbage dump.
It is the West garbage dump.
Roland Burke lives here in Bangladesh. He spent a year in these yards writing a book about the industry. We hired him to guide us through the tangled world of shipbreaking. To do the same work in America or in England, I take it would be very expensive.
It would be, because in Europe and America, when they do this, they do it in dry dock. So in actual fact, the owners of these ships are selling them to the yard owners here to break up. If they had to do it in America, they'd have to pay for that process to be carried out. So you can see it makes real economic sense to do it here.
So old, outdated ships that were previously a liability are now an asset.
Exactly, and that's why they end up on these shores.
The shores of the most densely populated nation and one of the poorest nations in the world. It desperately needs steel for construction, but has no iron ore mines. The shipbreaking yards are its mines, providing 80% of the nation's steel. But steel is only part of the deal. There are so many things on a ship which are sold off. It is in fact a gigantic recycling operation. You can find everything, including the kitchen sink, at a sprawling roadside market. It goes on for miles. When you're driving down this road, it's not a problem if you need a toilet, or a lifeboat, or a light bulb. It's estimated that 97% of the ship's contents are recycled. The other 3%, the stuff nobody would buy, the hazardous waste, asbestos, arsenic, and mercury, are left behind to foul the beaches. And what we're looking at, which is a recycling operation, is also an environmental disaster.
That's true. I think this is really capitalism as red and in tooth and claw and as raw as it gets. Well, at the moment, this is what makes financial sense for everybody, and this is, despite the fact that we might not like it and it doesn't look pretty, this is how it's done.
And this is what's done to the workers. They have no unions, no safety equipment, no training. About 50 are said to die in accidents each year, often in explosions set off by blowtorches deep inside the fume-filled holds. You see casualties in the yards, men who are injured here but have no money to go anywhere else. The workers are housed in barracks with no beds, just steel plates scavenged from the ships they break. Many of the workers are not old enough to grow a beard. Some are quite simply children. We spoke to several who said they were 14 and had been working here for 2 years. So you started working here when you were 12? So what does the man from peace, happiness, and prosperity say about that? Are there any children working in your yard?
Not my yard.
Well, we talked to several children.
Have you found any in my yard?
We found a couple who were 14 and said they've been working there for a couple of years.
Okay. They don't work, what they will do then? Their food, shelter, and clothing has to be provided by someone, whether their parents or the government. None of them can afford it. So what they're going to do?
So you say that child labor is inevitable, necessary in Bangladesh?
If they don't work in shipbreaking yard, they will work somewhere else. They have to.
But child labor is only one of the issues. Environmentalists have been doing battle with the industry for years. They say the West has no business dumping its toxic wastes on impoverished lands in the East. They condemn the appalling work conditions here, the low pay, the lack of accountability for workers who get killed or injured. Their most important proposal, that ships get cleansed of their toxic materials in the West before they sail to Bangladesh. That's in line with an international ban which prohibits the shipment of hazardous waste from rich countries to poorer countries. Rizwana Hassan of the Bangladeshi Environmental Lawyers Association is in the forefront of the battle against the industry. She says the shipbreaking yards here don't respect even the most minimal environmental standards.
And an industry that can't comply with these minimum standards must not operate.
Must not operate?
Yes. If you can't pay your worker the minimum wage, you can't operate. If you can't ensure the minimum environmental safeguard, you shouldn't operate.
But the owners of the yards argue that environmentalism is a luxury reserved for the rich nations.
It becomes quite expensive, which we can't afford. It doesn't matter.
All the rules and regulations, all the international conventions regarding shipwrecking were observed here, would the industry be able to survive?
No, it will be stopped from tomorrow.
And that, he says, would put 30,000 men out of work and deprive Bangladesh of its source of steel.
Yeah, good morning, Cap. Channel 10, please.
But for now, the shipwrecking industry in Bangladesh is sailing full steam ahead, literally. We boarded a Russian fishing trawler, the Bata, in the final hours of its last voyage. It was eerie walking through the corridors. The lights were on, but nobody was home. It was a dead ship sailing. In the sailor's cabin, the sheets were on the bed, a radio and a flashlight were on the table. A Christmas card, a Russian Christmas card. In the kitchen, pots filled with borscht and potatoes were barely cold. It is a Russian ship. Remnants of the Last Supper. In the dining room, there were still Russian books on a table. They too will end up in the market on that dusty road to Chittagong. There was just a skeleton crew on this skeleton ship.
Что там осталось, Петрович? Небольшая, ладно.
On the bridge, Captain Eduard Petenko already seemed dressed up for his coming vacation. He had brought the ship all the way from Vladivostok and didn't enjoy the trip. Usually, you're captain of a ship. You're supposed to keep it off the beach. You're supposed to keep it in the water. What does it feel like to take it to the beach? Is it...
No like.
You don't like it?
No like. Sometimes seamen cry.
Sometimes you cry.
Yeah.
He wasn't even in charge anymore. The baton had passed to the beaching captain, Inam Chowdhury. He had done this 700 times. They call him the executioner.
330.
This is a very delicate operation. It's not simply aiming for the beach. He's got to calculate the movement of the tides, the swell, the wind by the minute. He's got to wedge the ship between two vessels already parked there.
At half speed. It is around, Captain.
The workers on ships nearby are cheering. The Bata's arrival means more work, more wages for them. Their backs and their lungs will suffer, but do they have a choice?
Blood ships.
The Bata steamed its way into its final resting place. The bow got stuck in the sand. A perfect end to the last voyage.
Thank you very much. Good steering.
In just a few months, it will disappear.
Bye-bye. Okay, Cap. Thank you.
And Captain Petenko, he'll head home to Vladivostok, but he'll be back here soon. His company has 3 more trawlers heading to these shipyards.